31 battles that changed world history. Opening. Here's something they skip in history class. The entire course of human civilization has been decided by a handful of days where people killed each other really efficiently. We're not talking about skirmishes or minor border disputes. We're talking about battles where the outcome literally rewrote maps, toppled empires, and sent history careening in completely different directions. This is about those moments when everything hung on whether some general made the right call, whether the weather cooperated, or whether someone's cavalry showed up on time. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the fate of millions can be decided in a few hours of organized violence. Let that sink in. 1. The Battle of Marathon, when runners became messengers of doom. What if a bunch of Greek farmers defeated the most powerful empire in the world and invented cardio torture in the process? In 490 BCE, the Persian Empire under Darius sent a massive invasion force to punish Athens for supporting Greek rebels. About 25,000 Persian troops landed at Marathon, facing roughly 10,000 Athenian hoplites and 1,000 Plataeans. The Greeks should have been slaughtered. Instead, the Athenian general Miltiades used the terrain brilliantly, reinforcing his flanks and letting the center intentionally weaken. The Persians pushed through the middle, then got surrounded and massacred as the Greek wings closed in. Over 6,000 Persians died. Athens lost fewer than 200. The messenger Pheidippides ran 26 miles to Athens to announce victory, then died. His run became the Marathon. Greece remained free, democracy survived, and Western civilization didn't become a Persian footnote. All because some farmers with shields decided to charge professional soldiers. Tactical genius beats numerical advantage. 2. The Battle of Thermopylae, 300 Spartans, and bad geography. Here's a lesson in how to lose a battle, but win a propaganda war. In 480 BCE, Persian king Xerxes invaded Greece with possibly 100,000 plus troops. King Leonidas of Sparta led 300 Spartans plus about 7,000 other Greeks to the narrow coastal pass at Thermopylae to delay them. For 3 days, the Greeks held the pass, using the terrain to negate Persian numbers. Then a local Greek trader named Ephialtes showed the Persians a mountain path around the pass. Leonidas realized they were flanked and sent most of the army away. The 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, and 400 Thebans stayed to fight to the death, buying time for Greece to evacuate and prepare. They were annihilated, but the delay allowed the Greek navy to win at Salamis and the army to regroup. Thermopylae became the rallying cry for Greek resistance. Losing strategically to win culturally is a hell of a trade-off. 3. The Battle of Salamis, naval disaster saves democracy. If you're going to trap yourself in a narrow strait, make sure the enemy follows you in. After Thermopylae, the Persians burned Athens in September 480 BCE. The Greek fleet, outnumbered roughly 700 Persian ships to 370 Greek triremes, faced annihilation. Athenian general Themistocles lured the Persians into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their numbers became a liability. The massive Persian ships couldn't maneuver. Greek triremes rammed them, causing chaos. Persian ships collided with each other, capsized, or were systematically destroyed. Xerxes watched from shore as his fleet was shattered. He retreated with most of his army, leaving a smaller force that would be defeated the next year at Plataea. Western civilization survived because one guy understood naval tactics better than an emperor. Geography wins wars. 4. The Battle of Gaugamela, when Alexander broke Persia. What if you're outnumbered 5-1 and you just win anyway? In 331 BCE, Alexander the Great faced Persian king Darius III at Gaugamela in modern Iraq. Darius had around 100,000 troops, war chariots, and war elephants. Alexander had maybe 47,000. Darius chose flat terrain to use his chariots and cavalry. Alexander used his companion cavalry to create a gap in the Persian line, then personally led a charge directly at Darius. Darius panicked and fled, causing his army to collapse. The Persian Empire, which had lasted over 200 years, effectively ended in an afternoon. Alexander became master of the known world at age 25, all because one king ran and the other didn't. Courage is contagious, and so is cowardice. 5. The Battle of Cannae, Hannibal's masterclass in encirclement. Here's a lesson in how to destroy an army twice your size through pure tactical genius. In 216 BCE, during the Second Punic War, Hannibal's Carthaginian army of about 50,000 faced a Roman force of 80,000 to 85,000 at Cannae in southern Italy. The Romans, confident in their numbers, advanced in a dense formation. Hannibal arranged his troops in a crescent, with weak infantry in the center and strong cavalry on the flanks. As the Romans pushed forward, the Carthaginian center gave ground while the flanks held. Then the cavalry crushed the Roman cavalry and swung behind the Roman infantry. The crescent became a circle. The Romans were trapped and slaughtered. Between 50,000 to 70,000 Romans died in a single day, one of the bloodiest battles in history. Rome lost 1/5 of its adult male population. Yet Rome refused to surrender, eventually defeating Carthage. Tactical brilliance couldn't overcome strategic stubbornness. 6. The Battle of Alesia, Caesar's impossible siege. What if you're surrounded while surrounding someone else and somehow win both fights? In 52 BCE, Julius Caesar besieged the Gallic stronghold of Alesia, held by Vercingetorix with about 80,000 warriors. Caesar built 18 miles of fortifications around Alesia to starve them out. Then a Gallic relief army of possibly 250,000 warriors arrived to save Vercingetorix, surrounding Caesar's 60,000 legionaries. Caesar built another 14 miles of fortifications facing outward. He was now besieging Alesia while being besieged himself. The Gauls attacked from both sides simultaneously. Caesar's legions held both lines, then launched a cavalry counterattack that routed the relief force. Vercingetorix surrendered. Gaul became Roman. Caesar's reputation became unstoppable, leading to civil war and the end of the Roman Republic. Double sieges aren't supposed to work, but Caesar didn't read the manual. 7. The Battle of Actium, naval battle that created an empire. If you're going to lose a naval battle, don't sail away with your girlfriend in the middle of it. In 31 BCE, Octavian's fleet faced Mark Antony and Cleopatra's combined forces off the coast of Greece. Antony had larger ships. Octavian had more maneuverability and better morale. The battle was indecisive until Cleopatra, commanding 60 Egyptian ships, suddenly sailed away through a gap. Antony, seeing his lover flee, abandoned his fleet and followed her. His remaining forces surrendered or were destroyed. Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide a year later. Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The Republic died, and the empire was born because someone chose love over victory. Romance stays undefeated at ruining political. 8. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest, Rome's Vietnam. Here's a lesson in what happens when you trust the wrong guy in a dark forest. In 9 CE, Roman general Varus led 3 legions, about 20,000 troops, through the Teutoburg Forest in Germania. His guide was Arminius, a Germanic chieftain who'd served in Rome's auxiliary forces. Arminius was also secretly organizing a rebellion. As the Romans marched through the forest in terrible weather, Germanic tribes ambushed them over 3 days. The legions were strung out, couldn't form battle lines, and were slaughtered. Varus committed suicide. Rome lost 3 entire legions, about 10% of its army. Emperor Augustus supposedly banged his head against walls, shouting, "Varus, give me back my legions." Rome never seriously tried to conquer Germania again. The Rhine became the permanent border. One betrayal changed the map of Europe. 9. The Battle of Yarmouk. Islam expands forever. What if one battle ended Roman control of the Middle East after 700 years? In 636 CE, Byzantine forces of 80,000 to 150,000 faced the Rashidun Caliphate's army of 25,000 to 40,000 near the Yarmouk River in modern Syria. The Byzantines were exhausted from decades of war with Persia. The Muslims were motivated, mobile, and tactically superior. Over 6 days of fighting, Muslim cavalry outmaneuvered the Byzantine infantry. On the final day, a massive dust storm blew into the Byzantine faces. The Muslim army charged, driving the Byzantines to the edge of ravines where thousands fell to their deaths or were slaughtered. Syria, Palestine, and eventually Egypt fell to Islam. Christianity lost its Middle Eastern heartland. The Islamic Golden Age began. One battle redrew religious and cultural maps for 1,400 years and counting. 10. The Battle of Tours. Europe stays Christian. If you're going to stop an invasion, do it between Tours and Poitiers, so historians argue forever about the location. In 732 CE, the Umayyad Caliphate, having conquered Spain, invaded Francia, modern France. Emir Abdul-Rahman led possibly 60,000 cavalry north. Charles Martel, leader of the Franks, gathered 15,000 to 75,000 infantry and met them somewhere between Tours and Poitiers. For 6 days they skirmished. On day 7, Rahman's cavalry charged the Frankish shield wall repeatedly and failed to break through. Frankish forces counterattacked the Muslim camp. Rahman was killed, and the Umayyad army retreated to Spain. Muslim expansion into Western Europe permanently halted. Some historians argue Tours saved Christian Europe. Others say it was just one raid. Either way, Paris-speaking Arabic became significantly less likely. Shield walls beat cavalry charges. 11. The Battle of Hastings. One arrow changes England forever. Here's a lesson in how dying at the wrong moment ruins everything. In 1066, Harold Godwinson had just defeated a Viking invasion at Stamford Bridge when he learned William of Normandy had landed in southern England. Harold force-marched his exhausted army 250 miles south. On October 14th, the English shield wall held the high ground at Hastings. William's cavalry charges failed repeatedly. Then either an arrow struck Harold in the eye, or he was hacked down in close combat. Historians still argue. With their king dead, English morale collapsed. William I became king and imposed Norman French culture on England. The English language became a hybrid of Anglo-Saxon and French. The entire English aristocracy was replaced. English history split into before Hastings and after Hastings. One death changed a language and a nation. 12. The Battle of Ain Jalut. Mongols meet their match. What if the unstoppable Mongol war machine finally stopped? In 1260, the Mongol Empire seemed invincible, having conquered everything from China to Eastern Europe. Then Hulagu Khan's forces invaded the Middle East, destroying Baghdad and massacring hundreds of thousands. The Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt sent an army under General Baibars to meet them at Ain Jalut in modern Israel. The Mamluks, mostly former slave soldiers, used a feigned retreat to lure the Mongols into a trap. Hidden Mamluk forces surrounded and destroyed the Mongol army. Mongol General Kitbuka was killed. The Mongols retreated and never returned to the Middle East. The myth of Mongol invincibility shattered. The Islamic world survived. One battle proved even the apocalypse can be stopped with the right tactics. 13. The fall of Constantinople, cannons in the Middle Ages. If you're going to defend medieval walls, don't let the enemy bring Renaissance artillery. In 1453, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II besieged Constantinople with 80,000 troops and massive cannons designed by Hungarian engineer Orban. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI had maybe 7,000 defenders and walls that had protected the city for 1,000 years. For 53 days, Ottoman cannons pounded the walls. On May 29th, a final assault breached the walls. Constantine died fighting. The city fell. The Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of Rome, ended. Orthodox refugees fled to Western Europe, bringing Greek texts that sparked the Renaissance. The Ottomans controlled trade routes, forcing Europeans to seek sea routes to Asia, leading to the Age of Exploration. Medieval warfare died with Constantinople. Gunpowder changed everything. 14. The Battle of Lepanto, the last great galley fight. Here's a lesson in how to win the last battle of an obsolete technology. In 1571, The Ottoman Empire's fleet of about 230 galleys faced the Holy League's 206 galleys in the Gulf of Patras, Greece. This was the last major battle fought primarily by road warships. The Christians had 6 galleasses, hybrid sailing galleys with heavy guns. The Ottoman center crashed into the Holy League line in brutal boarding actions. The galleasses' firepower devastated Ottoman formations. After 4 hours of savage fighting, the Ottoman fleet was shattered. They lost 210 ships and 30,000 men. The Holy League lost 17 ships and 8,000 men. Ottoman naval dominance in the Mediterranean ended. Psychologically, Christian Europe realized the Ottomans weren't invincible. The age of galleys was over. Sailing warships and cannons were the future. One battle closed a chapter of naval warfare. 15. The Spanish Armada, Weather Winds Wars. What if you sent 130 ships to invade England and most of them just sank? In 1588, King Philip II of Spain sent the invincible armada of 130 ships and 30,000 men to invade Protestant England. The plan: sail up the English Channel, pick up an army from the Netherlands, invade. The English Navy harassed them with faster, more maneuverable ships and long-range cannons. At Gravelines, English fireships scattered the armada, forcing them to flee north around Scotland and Ireland. Then the weather turned apocalyptic. Storms wrecked over 50 ships. Thousands drowned. Only 67 ships limped back to Spain. Spanish naval supremacy ended. England remained Protestant and began its rise as a naval power. Philip's invincible armada proved that hubris plus bad weather equals disaster. The seas declared Elizabeth the winner. 16. The Battle of Breitenfeld, gunpowder tactics evolve. If you're going to revolutionize warfare, do it while everyone's watching. In 1631, during the 30 Years' War, Swedish King Gustavus Adolphus faced the Catholic Imperial Army under Tilly near Leipzig. Both sides had roughly 40,000 troops. Tilly used traditional tercio formations, massive blocks of pikemen and musketeers. Gustavus used smaller, more flexible units with better-trained musketeers who could fire faster. Swedish artillery was lighter and more mobile. The Swedes demolished the imperial flanks while the center held. Tilly's army broke and fled, losing 13,000 men. Gustavus lost 3,500. Sweden became a major European power. More importantly, every army in Europe copied Swedish tactics. The tercio was obsolete. Modern combined arms warfare was born. Sometimes winning means teaching everyone else how you won. 17. The Battle of Vienna, coffee and croissants. Here's a lesson in last-minute cavalry charges saving Western civilization. In 1683, the Ottoman Empire besieged Vienna with 150,000 troops, planning to take the city and push into the heart of Europe. The Viennese garrison of 15,000 held out for 2 months, starving and desperate. On September 12th, a relief force of 70,000 led by Polish King Jan III Sobieski arrived. Sobieski led the largest cavalry charge in history. 18,000 Polish, Austrian, and German horsemen thundering down a hillside into the Ottoman flank. The Ottoman line shattered. They fled, abandoning their camp with all its supplies. Vienna was saved. Ottoman expansion into Europe permanently halted. Legend says the Ottomans left behind sacks of coffee beans, leading to Vienna's coffee culture. Croissants supposedly celebrate the victory. Cavalry charges and breakfast pastries. What a legacy. 18. The Battle of Plassey. 3,000 beat 50,000 with bribery. What if you won a battle by paying the enemy not to fight? In 1757, the British East India Company under Robert Clive faced the Nawab of Bengal's army of 50,000 troops and French artillery. Clive had 3,000 soldiers. He should have been destroyed. Instead, Clive bribed the Nawab's commander, Mir Jafar, to betray his master. During the battle, Mir Jafar's forces stood idle. The Nawab's remaining troops were decimated by British artillery. The Nawab fled and was later executed by Mir Jafar. The British East India Company gained control of Bengal, one of the richest regions in the world. This battle began British colonial rule of India, which would last 190 years. India's fate was decided by corruption and treachery, not military valor. Bribes beat bullets. 19. The Battle of Saratoga. America gets a European ally. If you're going to win a revolution, convince someone bigger to help. In 1777, during the American Revolution, British General Burgoyne's army of 7,200 faced American forces at Saratoga, New York. The Americans, under Gates and Arnold, surrounded the British. Burgoyne, cut off from supplies and reinforcements, surrendered his entire army on October 17th. It was the first major American victory and proved the rebels could defeat professional British forces. More importantly, France had been watching. Saratoga convinced King Louis XVI that America could win. France entered the war in 1778, providing troops, naval support, and money. Without French assistance, American independence was nearly impossible. Saratoga didn't just win a battle, it recruited an empire. Diplomacy via military victory. 20. The Battle of Valmy, a cannonade that saved a revolution. Here's a lesson in how artillery duels can change political systems. In 1792, revolutionary France faced invasion by Prussia and Austria, who wanted to restore the French monarchy. At Valmy, the Prussian army of 34,000 elite troops faced 36,000 French revolutionary forces, many of them untrained volunteers. Everyone expected a Prussian massacre. Instead, French artillery proved devastatingly effective. After hours of cannon fire, the Prussians withdrew, shocked that revolutionary citizen soldiers fought so well. Prussia abandoned the invasion. The French Revolution survived. The French Republic was proclaimed the next day. The battle proved that revolutionary ideals could inspire armies to fight as well as professionals. The age of citizen armies had begun. Ideology became a military asset. 21. The Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon's final curtain. What if your greatest general just lost? In 1815, Napoleon returned from exile for the 100 Days. At Waterloo in Belgium, he faced the Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Allied army of 68,000 and Prussian forces under Blücher. Napoleon had 72,000. Wellington held the high ground. Napoleon attacked repeatedly, but the British squares held against cavalry charges. Late in the day, as Napoleon was finally breaking the British center, Blücher's Prussians arrived and smashed Napoleon's right flank. The French army collapsed. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to St. Helena, where he died. The Napoleonic Wars, which had killed millions and reshaped Europe, ended. The Congress of Vienna redrew the map. France was diminished. Britain became the dominant power, and Europe got 40 years of relative peace. One battle ended an era. 22. The Battle of Gettysburg, the Confederacy's high watermark. If you're going to invade the North, maybe don't charge across an open field uphill in a cannons. In July 1863, Confederate General Robert E. Lee invaded Pennsylvania with 75,000 troops. Union General Meade had 97,000. They collided at Gettysburg. Over 3 days of savage fighting, Lee attacked repeatedly, losing thousands. On July 3rd, Lee ordered pickets charge. 12,500 Confederates marched across a mile of open ground toward entrenched Union positions. Union artillery and rifle fire massacred them. Only a few hundred reached the Union lines before being killed or captured. Lee lost a third of his army and retreated to Virginia. The Confederacy never recovered the offensive. Gettysburg was the turning point of the Civil War. The Union would win, slavery would end, and America would remain one nation. One doomed charge changed everything. 23. The Battle of Tsushima, Japan announces its arrival. Here's a lesson in how to destroy an entire fleet in one afternoon. In 1905, during the Russo-Japanese War, the Russian Baltic Fleet sailed 18,000 miles to fight Japan. Admiral Togo's Japanese fleet intercepted them in the Tsushima Strait. The Japanese had faster, more modern ships and better trained crews. In an 8-hour battle, the Japanese sank 21 Russian ships and captured 7 more. Russia lost 4,380 killed, 5,917 captured. Japan lost 3 torpedo boats and 117 men. It was the most decisive naval victory in history. Russia sued for peace. Japan became a recognized world power, the first Asian nation to defeat a European empire. The victory shocked the world and inspired anti-colonial movements across Asia. One battle announced the end of European dominance. 24. The Battle of Tannenberg, Germany's Eastern masterpiece. What if you destroyed 2 entire Russian armies in a week? In August 1914, just weeks into World War I, Russia invaded Germany with 2 armies totaling 300,000 troops. German General von Hindenburg and his Chief of Staff Ludendorff had only 150,000. Using railway mobility and intelligence from intercepted Russian radio messages, the Germans concentrated forces against one Russian army at Tannenberg while screening the other. The Russians walked into a trap. Within days, an entire Russian army was encircled and destroyed. 78,000 Russians were killed or wounded, 92,000 captured. Germany lost 12,000. The Second Russian Army retreated after a similar defeat at the Masurian Lakes. Germany's Eastern Front was secure, allowing them to focus on France. Russia never fully recovered from this disaster. 2 armies destroyed in 2 weeks. Tactical brilliance meets strategic incompetence. 25. The Battle of the Marne, taxis to the rescue. What if you stopped a German invasion using Parisian taxicabs? In September 1914, the German army was 30 miles from Paris after sweeping through Belgium and France. The Schlieffen Plan was working. Then French commander Joffre spotted a gap in the German lines and ordered a counterattack along the Marne River. The problem? French reserves were in Paris. Military Governor Gallieni requisitioned 600 Parisian taxis to rush 6,000 troops to the front. It's disputed how much the taxis mattered, but it became legendary. Combined with British forces, the Allies stopped the German advance. Germany retreated and dug trenches. The war of movement ended. For years of trench warfare began. Paris was saved by quick thinking, logistics, and possibly some cab drivers. The Western Front was born at the Marne. 26. The Battle of Stalingrad, hell on earth. Here's a lesson in how to destroy an army through sheer attrition and stubbornness. From August 1942 to February 1943, Germany's 6th Army under Paulus fought Soviet forces for control of Stalingrad. The battle became a meat grinder of urban warfare, with both sides fighting room by room, building by building. In November, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus, encircling the 6th Army. Hitler forbade retreat. Paulus's 265,000 troops were trapped, freezing, and starving. A relief attempt failed. On February 2, 1943, Paulus surrendered with 91,000 survivors. Germany lost an entire army. The Eastern Front turned permanently against Germany. Stalingrad became the symbol of Soviet resistance. The myth of German invincibility died in the rubble. The Nazis would never recover the initiative. One city became Hitler's graveyard. 27. The Battle of Midway, 4 minutes that changed the Pacific. What if you sank 4 aircraft carriers in 5 minutes? In June 1942, Japan attacked Midway Island with 4 fleet carriers and support ships, hoping to destroy the U.S. Pacific Fleet. American codebreakers knew they were coming. 3 U.S. carriers ambushed them. For hours, American torpedo bombers were slaughtered by Japanese fighters. Then, dive bombers arrived, while Japanese carriers were refueling aircraft. In 5 minutes, dive bombers hit 3 Japanese carriers with bombs. All 3 sank. A 4th was destroyed later. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, 248 aircraft, and their offensive capability. America lost 1 carrier and 150 planes. The tide of the Pacific War turned. Japan would fight for 3 more years, but never regained the initiative. Naval dominance changed hands in 5 minutes. Luck and skill decided the Pacific. 28. D-Day, Normandy landings, the longest day. What if you invaded a continent with the largest seaborne invasion in history? On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord. 156,000 troops landed on 5 Normandy beaches, supported by 11,000 aircraft and 7,000 ships. German defenders expected an invasion at Calais and were caught off guard. Omaha Beach became a bloodbath, but the others succeeded. By nightfall, the Allies held the beaches. Within weeks, they broke out into France. Paris was liberated in August. Germany now fought a two-front war they couldn't win. The Eastern and Western fronts closed like a vice. Nazi Germany would collapse within a year. D-Day didn't end the war, but it guaranteed the outcome. Western Europe was liberated. The largest amphibious invasion in history succeeded. 29. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu, guerrillas beat an empire. Here's a lesson in how to lose a battle so badly you lose an entire colony. In 1954, France tried to lure Vietnamese communist forces into a decisive battle by fortifying Dien Bien Phu Valley in northern Vietnam. General Giap accepted the challenge. French commanders thought Vietnamese forces lacked heavy artillery and couldn't get it through the jungle mountains. They were wrong. Giap's forces hand-carried disassembled artillery pieces through impossible terrain and positioned them on the surrounding hills. When the siege began, French positions were pounded relentlessly. After 57 days, the garrison of 10,000 surrendered. France lost 2,200 killed, 1,700 missing. French colonial rule in Indochina ended. Vietnam was divided at Geneva, setting the stage for American involvement. One battle ended French imperialism in Asia. Artillery won, hubris lost. 30. The Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle ever. What if you put 6,000 tanks in one place and let them fight it out? In July 1943, Germany launched Operation Citadel, attempting to encircle Soviet forces at the Kursk salient in Russia. Hitler committed 780,000 troops, 2,700 tanks, and 2,000 aircraft. The Soviets knew they were coming thanks to intelligence and prepared 1.3 million troops, 3,600 tanks, and extensive defensive fortifications. On July 5th, that the Germans attacked. For 2 weeks, the largest tank battle in history raged across the Russian steppe. At Prokhorovka, on July 12th, over 800 tanks collided in a single engagement in brutal close-range combat. The Soviets absorbed the German attacks and launched massive counteroffensives. By August, Germany had lost 200,000 casualties and 760 tanks they couldn't replace. The Soviet steamroller began its unstoppable advance westward. Germany would never launch another major offensive in the east. The Wehrmacht was broken at Kursk. Tank warfare reached its apocalyptic peak. 31. The Battle of 73 Easting, Desert Storm's Invisible Victory. Here's a lesson in how modern warfare became a video game, where one side had all the cheat codes. On February 26, 1991, during the Gulf War, the U.S. 2nd Armored Cavalry encountered Iraq's elite Tawakalna Republican Guard Division in the desert at coordinates 73 Easting. Iraqi T-72 tanks faced American M1A1 Abrams. It wasn't a fight, it was a demonstration. American thermal sights saw through sandstorms. Iraqi tanks were destroyed before their crews knew Americans were there. In 23 minutes, American forces destroyed 160 Iraqi tanks, 180 personnel carriers, and 12 artillery pieces. American losses: 1 Bradley destroyed, 1 soldier killed. The battle proved the revolution in military technology. GPS, thermal imaging, precision weapons, and information dominance made conventional forces obsolete against high-tech militaries. The nature of warfare had changed. Technology won before tactics mattered. Closing. And there you have it. 31 battles where the course of civilization pivoted on the decisions of generals, the bravery of soldiers, and sometimes just dumb luck or bad weather. Empires rose and fell. Religions spread or were stopped. Maps were redrawn. Technologies were proven or made obsolete. And millions of people who never wanted to be involved had their fates decided by a few hours of violence they had no control over. It's a reminder that history isn't inevitable. It's contingent. One arrow, one cavalry charge, one storm, one tactical decision, and everything changes. So which battle surprised you the most? Which one do you think was the most important? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tour through humanity's most consequential organized violence, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that proves everything you know could have gone completely differently. Stay grateful you weren't there.